Dante's Woods, a wood called Gnosis. John's 35th Annual Christmas Poem. By John R. Wible. December 25, 2015. Canto 1 Prologus. Pride, envy, and avarice are the three sparks that have set these hearts on fire. Dante, Inferno, Canto 6, lines 74 through 75. Lebanon, that's all it said, and it was signed in Hebrew script. John Blue puzzled over the text that just came in from his bank. Why in the world would there be a charge from Lebanon, he thought, staring blankly into his Starbucks cappuccino. And why would there be no way to follow up, not enough information? This was troubling. The Middle East is blowing itself up by the day, and I get a visa charge from Lebanon, really? Immediately, he called the bank, and after listening through the usual phone tree messages about how much they could save in this holiday season, he got a live human being. He asked about the charge, but to no avail. The person on the other end said, in somewhat broken English, "I am being very, very sorry, Mr. John Blue, but we are having no other information." Well, he thought that was that, we are having no other information. Now confused and troubled, he had to let it go in favor of more pressing matters. Sunday school lesson preparation was way behind. Opening his Bible, John Blue began to read over the Christmas story in Matthew. It was the time of the year and he had to get cracking on his Christmas lesson. Matthew is always a good place to start, he thought, and he went there on his laptop program. This is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be pregnant in Lebanon. Wait a minute, did I read that right, in Lebanon? This is getting creepy, no, creepier. He looked it up in another program, but it read the same way, in Lebanon. Now I know the Messiah was not born in Lebanon, he said out loud. He resorted to his old Schofield reference edition of the King James Version. Fingers flying, he leafed to the page. There it was, now in black ink on white vellum paper, in Lebanon. He looked up Lebanon in several Bible dictionaries. One stated, the cities of Lebanon were centers of the pottery, glass, and bluegrass dye industries. Their harbors also served as warehouses for products imported from Syria, Persia, and environs. Passing over that definition, he researched the word in archaic Hebrew script, to see if there was a hidden meaning he and every preacher he ever heard had missed. But no. It was getting late, and the rack monster was calling to him. He yielded to it and dozed off. The dong-donging of the doorbell greeting him the next morning by his mail carrier bringing him a letter for which he had to sign. It was from the United States of America, Office of Strategic Services. Office of Strategic Services, Coordinator of Information. Dear Mr. John Blue. In the government's ongoing efforts to prevent terrorism in the United States, OSS has been monitoring communications to you from a person or persons known only to us at this time as Mo. We have concerns since these communications were thought to be sent from Lebanon. As you know, Lebanon borders both Syria and Israel, areas of strategic importance to this office. Upon further investigation, we have determined that the communications originated not in Lebanon in the Middle East but from Lebanon, Kentucky. Specifically from an address registered to the I Am the Cab Company, Moshe Ben Yaminitz Al-Masraku, owner. Sir, this office believes this matter to be of national security importance and we have begun to surveil the location. However, we have observed nothing of significance. We, therefore, have an unusual request of you. We are asking that you travel to Lebanon, Kentucky and make contact with Mr. Moshe Ben Yaminitz Al-Masraku. Please report anything you find back to this office. Sincerely, Colonel William J. Donovan, Coordinator of Information, OSS. What kind of James Bond stuff is this? John Blue blurted out to the mail carrier, the Office of Strategic Services of the United States government. Really? I don't know, sir. I just deliver the mail, I don't write it, retorted the somewhat taken aback carrier. John Blue now found himself in a quandary. He mulled a multitude of misadventures in his muddled brain. How to untie, or cut this Gordian knot, to even attempt to untie it, or to forget it and to go back to the books. Is this real? Is it happening? Am I dreaming? Is this some sort of joke by one of my funky friends at the office? Or should I play along? National security? John Blue was intrigued as the time the FBI agents mistook him for Mr. Baloo from Florida, and started carting him off to some interrogation. Well, he mused, I eventually blew that off and refused to play. Maybe this time, I will play. And he did. In a bold stroke of sheer bravado belying his age, John Blue Googled it and with the aid of Colonel Donovan chartered a flight to Lebanon's Springfield Airport somewhere south of Springfield and north of Lebanon, Kentucky. A national security adventure was about to answer some asked and unasked questions for John Blue, answers not for him alone, but truly for national security. Canto 2 I Dinger. Midway this way of life we are bound upon, I woke to find myself in a dark wood, where the right road was wholly lost and gone. Dante, Divina Commedia, Canto I, Line 3. John Blue's flight began without incident but quickly devolved into a NASCAR-like race with a line of thunderstorms moving in from the east. Bryant, his pilot brought to rest by the hardest the 1989 Cessna Citation II, that he had recently bought from the state. It needed work before the flight but now, well, airworthiness was certainly brought into question. John Blue deplaned, never more pleased to once again walk on the face of the earth. That had been in doubt for a while. But now he stumbled into what he learned was a totally empty terminal, the 612 building. As always, he was dragging his baggage behind himself. Unbeknownst to John Blue, Moshe Ben-Yamin's El Masriku was already awaiting John Blue in the ground transportation parking lot. Hello? Hello? Hello, anybody around? John Blue called with increasing volume. Silence. All John Blue could hear was the intermittent disinterested humming of the water fountain motor underlying the echo of his voice. John Blue stared inquisitively at the mural on the scaly textured iridescent northern wall of the building, the 4 points of the compass star flanked by the words, "You are in the center of it all." 2 other walls were painted a shade of red, that he had never really seen before. The ceiling was covered with a rug material the color of camel hair. This terminal was the first, but not the last, oddity that John Blue would observe in this adventure of national security. A ooga sounded through what appeared to be a curtain draped in the center of the wall to the east directly in front of John Blue. A ooga, it sounded again and then again. By this time, John Blue noticed the portal in the wall behind the curtain and he walked through it. The bright, high noon, sunny sky nearly blinded John Blue. This starkly contrasted the misty, to gray, to black, to blue, to green, and back to gray, which described fairly accurately the sky in which John Blue, Brian, and their Cessna had just flown. The lot was empty save for what John Blue would learn was the cab belonging to the I Am the Cab company. The back passenger side door popped open, and a Middle Eastern-sounding voice bellowed from the interior darkness, "I would need a taxicab?" "Okay," John Blue entered tentatively, still dragging his baggage. "What about the bags?" "Not to worry, I will take all your baggage," the voice intoned reassuringly. 2 sturdy and tightly sleeved, well-worn hands, but not a head, reached into the back seat of the 1936 Cord 810 Westchester taxicab and the still only partially seen figure grabbed the baggage and stowed it in the massive trunk. Slamming the lid shut with a sturdy boom-click bounce, the still headless cabbie opened the driver door, sat down, and gently closed it with a mild click, all to the amazement of a John Blue, who was gradually learning he should not be amazed by anything he saw. "Sigh, I would like Shy? And Pitta?" "Sure, Shy." John Blue nodded toward the cabbie's mirror. "Sigh, I'm sorry, what did you ask?" "Sigh, tea. Shy is a drink, not a driver, tea. I would like tea and pita bread." At this moment, John Blue felt as if he were in a vaudeville routine and he was the straight man. "Shy is tea, then who is the driver? Who are you?" John Blue had already scanned the driver's identification card on the dashboard and found no help, as it appeared to be written in some Middle Eastern script. "Exactly who are you and where are taking me for, Shy?" Chasers. Chasers is where you are taking me, or is your name? John Blue continued, confused. Chasers is best shy shack in Lebanon. I, Sayyid and Moshe Ben Yaminetz Al Masraku, at your humble service, but you should call me Mo. Pita bread is good, too there I think. Mo, mirrored John Blue to the mustachioed man of some Mediterranean descent, at least by John Blue's surmise. Immediately, the word, terrorist, splashed across the canvas of his mind. Great, I've gotten into a cab with some Middle Eastern terrorist. Mo is no terrorist, Sayyid is safe, replied Mo to John Blue's unwhispered words. However, John Blue was unconvinced, and besides by now he had tired of the vaudeville routine and ready to look for answers. Answers, he thought, I don't even know the questions. Chasers may have been the best shy shack in town, but the tea was hot and spicy, not what John Blue was used to. Then again, this was Lebanon and not home. Shy is not hot, Sayyid, but it is spicy, cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg, I think. Yes, that is the recipe, again answered Mo to John Blue's unsaid thoughts. Or was he not unsaying them? Confusion continued. It was not assuaged by the pita bread and hummus with spinach dip. Dip or no dip, John Blue decided to get down to business. Mo, I've been getting some unusual correspondence, and the OS has tracked it to you, he spilled, realizing that he was lousy at interrogation, and had now not only blown his cover, which never really existed anyway, but he had also muffed any chance of getting straight answers from Mo. Then Mo surprised him. This is all true as you say, Sayyid. Mo has invited Sayyid here to talk, to learn, to find answers. Answers? Yes, Sayyid, answers, and questions, too. You must walk with Mo deep, deep into the woods, Dante's woods. All will be answered in Dante's woods, or not, nodded yes like to Mo, or not. Perhaps it was the flight, the fright, or the fragrance of the cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg, or whatever it was they put in the chai, maybe the spinach dip, that made John Blue uncontrollably sleepy, and then the lights went out. In a cinnamon-induced stupor, John Blue dreamed about Dante. Not everybody dreams about Dante, but then again, not everybody had seen what John Blue had already seen on this day, and it was just getting rolling. He had read Dante Alighieri's Divina Commedia a long time ago, and all he could remember was something about the Inferno, medieval hell, not somewhere he wanted to walk, with Mo or with anybody else. But he would so walk, with Mo, and with others, 3 others. Questions would be asked. Questions would be answered. Answers would be questioned. Decisions would have to be made. As the sign on the wall, among a million others, in Chasers said, when all is said and done, more is said than is done. A familiarly unfamiliar feeling forced itself into John Blue's dream. No, not so much a feeling as much a sound, cacophonic yet sonorous at the same time, intimidating yet inviting. As John Blue's fog lifted, he realized that what he heard, what had awakened him, was the now known a-ooga of Mo's horn. John Blue stumbled to the motel room window and peered out. He stared directly into the headlights of Mo's cord cab. This was the second time today an unsuspected bright light had temporarily blinded John Blue. Recovering, he realized that darkness had descended, dropped like the grand drape at an ancient opera house. He looked at his watch, and realized that he'd slept all afternoon. Beginning to unbundle his brain, he tried to assess the situation, to size up the circumstances, to find his footing. Where exactly was he? How had he got there, and who in the name of Friar Tuck has dressed me in this ridiculous regalia? He gasped as he glimpsed his reflection in the motel mirror. He was instantly convulsed in a milieu of shock, surprise, and even amusement. There he stood, in a full monk's habit, complete with robe, hood, rope belt, and sandals. I hate sandals. A-ooga, interrupted his rant. Sayyid, we go now, called Mo leaning on the taxi door, we go now, others waiting. Sayyid, we go. Others? What others? What other fools could there possibly be who are as astounded as I am to show up in this sideshow? Sideshow, John Blue snorted. If this is the sideshow, what, or who is in the center ring? He would soon find out. In the sizable backseat of Moe's Westchester, John Blue, ignoring, at least temporarily, wanted to get past the obvious where and what questions, and concentrate on the who and why. Then, as he settled back, he began to become aware of just how scratchy this monk's robe is, he thought. Virgin wool. What? The robe, it is woven of wool, pure virgin wool. That is why it is scratching, Moe, of course said. John Blue was now becoming aware that Moe seemed to have a habit of that, answering unasked questions, almost reading thoughts. I took care of all your needs, Sid. Some are greater than others, but one is more needful than the rest, I think. John Blue accepted that answer as all he needed, at this point. Moe, can I ask you a couple of questions? Began John Blue, as he was now collected enough to remember why he had come there as the first place and to put aside, as maybe not that important, some of the obvious. He sensed that if he let Moe do the talking he'd learn a lot more. Moe, I thought I had an agenda, but it seems to have lost itself somewhere back about the 612 building. Since then, it's been, well, interesting. Interesting, yes, this circumstance is interesting. Life, it, too, is interesting, is it not, Sid? Waxed Moe deftly, pushing the parley past the conspicuous to the consequential, as easily as he shifted the cord's dry-clutch Bennett's transmission from third gear to fourth. Guessing that Moe probably knew that the government was onto him, John Blue decided to be direct. Who, exactly, are you and why did the government bring me into all this? There he put the cards on the table. Would Moe draw, play, lay down, or bluff? None of the above. An unexpected answer forced itself forward. Who is Moe? Should it not begin with, who is John Blue? Who does John Blue think he is? Is John Blue himself or is he someone else, perhaps many someone's else? Totally caught off guard but even more so intrigued, John Blue entered the battle of the question. Who am I, who am I, I'm John Blue, was his somewhat Rorschach reply, perhaps harkening back to Jean Valjean's line in Les Miserables. Moe was supremely up for the game, except that it wasn't a game he was playing. Rather, he was maneuvering the conversation toward the seat of the situation, the middle of the matter, the center of it all. Then, who is John Blue? Is he himself alone? For whom does he speak? For himself, for many more himselves like himself? Even sin fe in his plural, I think. Cerebral stuff, Moe. John Blue didn't yet get it, but he was trying. Here's one for you. Does this himself matter or is it only the himselves? Yes, was the not totally unexpected answer. John Blue was getting a read on Moe who, up to this point had been unknowable, but who was apparently now willing to reveal something of himself not so much by his answers but by his questions. Perhaps to get the right answer, one must ask the right question, John Blue surmised. Yes, Sid, it is so, I think, John Blue heard or possibly imagined Moe verbalize. Now, though Moe clearly stated, Sid is correct. It is the questions that matter and Moe is taking Sid to the center of the questions. Yeah, I've been wondering that, half questioned and half stated John Blue. This idea of the center of it all keeps popping up. I saw it on the wall at the 612 building and you've mentioned it more than a couple of times. What does the center of it all mean? If Sid would look in the pocket of the seat back, there a map will be found. Map of what? John Blue shot back as he complied with the request, or order, or whatever it was, HMM, a Rand McNally maps of the United States with Lebanon, Kentucky circled. So, why am I looking at a map of the United States? John Blue scanned the face of the map and even looked on the back. Obviously Moe was leading him to see the unobvious. He thought of the words on the wall at the 612 building, at the center of it all. Then he closed his eyes, and pictured the compass he had seen by the words. Opening his eyes again, and staring intently at the map he still saw only states and towns, lakes and rivers, and mountains and plains. To the north Lake Canada, to the south Mexico, east and west were oceans, and in the middle was, at the center of it all, was Kentucky, Lebanon, Kentucky to be specific. John Blue now combed the map for more data. There was a section on the back with little-known facts about each state. Okay, he read, Alabama was politically once part of Mississippi. Yeah, he knew that. California, the country store in Baker has sold more winning California state lottery tickets than any outlet in the state. Have to keep that in mind. Let's see. Minnesota. Minnesotan baseball commentator Halsey Hell was the first to say, "Holy cow," during a baseball broadcast. Holy cow? Assuming that last factoid is significant, interrupted Mo. Yes, SID, that is significant, but so are the others. SID we'll see. As fascinating as was his little adventures with maps, John Blue was anxious to get on with, well, whatever it was they would get on with. Besides, he was getting hungry. Spiked tea and crumpets had long since run out on him. Mo, are we by any chance going to that small park at the intersection of whatever roads it was? Bingo, that was a goodie. In about a mile, the United States Highway 281, straight, well-maintained, and smooth as glass, forked. Turning onto Kansas Route 191, the way became noticeably more rough and narrow and substantially less traveled. At its intersection with Double-A Road, Mo whipped the Westchester into a gravel parking lot, near what appeared in the glare of headlights to be a little white chapel of sorts. Beside the chapel, John Blue could make out a rock monument with a plaque on it, unreadable in the dark. Was this the center of it all? "Please to get out, SID, our guests are waiting for us," Mo urged. "Guests? Oh, yeah, the other fools who've been dragged into this, what did I call it? Oh yeah, sideshow, this sideshow. Not fool, knaves, SID, magi, men, in their own way, wise men three and a satrap, all pressed down, shaken together and running over for good measure." Under his breath, John Blue muttered, "Wise men? I wonder where they parked their camels, somewhere here in Lebanon no doubt. Better watch your step, Mo." Mo just looked at him. "Camels, get it? Camels? Never mind," John Blue sighed. When he got hungry, sometimes John Blue's sarcasm got the better of him, and he was hungry. Mo led him into the little white chapel. There were only 4 short pews facing a tiny stage overlooked by a time-worn, camel-colored tapestry of Da Vinci's Last Supper. In the center of the tiny stage, about 3 feet apart, stood 2 ancient emmet or lectern posts. 4 lone figures sat on the pews to John Blue's left with their backs toward him, toe on each pew. John Blue could recognize none of them, as they, too, were wearing the same robe and cowl as was John Blue. Mo motioned for John Blue to sit on the right side. All sat in a pregnant silence, not unlike waiting for Moses to come down from the mountain with the word. Here, though, there was neither mountain nor Moses. But then again, there was Mo, who coursed to the front, as though he had done this a million times before. He slowly turned toward the men and opened his mouth to speak. "Dear guests," he started, "this is John Blue, Adam. Like so many Adam, John Blue has reached this place, this mistar, by one way or another. This is his secret place, known only to him yet unsuspected by him, because he has not yet seen it. Each Adam has invited Ashpizim, his dear guests. Like each, he is no doubt surprised to find it was he that invited you specific 3 by the act of asking somewhere in his spirit. Like all Adam, he has been taught, and has the hope, that one, more, or all of you 3 can give the answer to the question he already knows, but has not yet asked even of himself. Ashpizim, do you know the answer? Do you know the question? Have you been taught that you do? John Blue, alone, must decide whether he will accept your answer. He must decide whether he will act on his acceptance of your answer. Many Adam do not know the answer, many think they know, but really do not desire to know, many know but do not act on their knowledge. A few, however, find their way. Having said this, Mo walked between the emmet to the back wall, where he parted the camel wall hanging, looking at John Blue, showing that he should follow. Mo and disappeared through the arras. Like Mo, John Blue, followed by each of the Ishpizim, walked through the pillars of the Amied, through the arras and through the back of the White Chapel. Outside and behind the White Chapel, John Blue saw a campfire encircled with 5 boulders. Seated on the center boulder was Mo. He offered a place to sit to John Blue and the still unidentified Ishpizin. "Seid is hungry, yes?" "Yes, very," replied John Blue, remembering it had been a long time since the sort of tea and crumpets. "May Mo offer Seid some fish?" John Blue noticed that there were broiled fish on sticks stuck in the ground suspended over the fire like the superstructure of the flying buttresses of a great Gothic cathedral. He had no idea the source of the fish, or how Mo ended up with them and cooked them so quickly. But then again, nothing Mo did was beginning to surprise him. He ate. This was the best fish he had ever eaten. Canto 3 Inferno. Hope not ever to see heaven. I have come to lead you to Theothershore, into eternal darkness, into fire and into ice. Dante's Guide, Virgil, Inferno, Canto 3. After all were satisfied, unbidden the first Ishpizin stood, now removing his hood and robe. He looked distantly familiar in the flicker of the firelight, being a somewhat thin man with a thin nose, then seemed to reach a point in a precise manner. His hair was a bit close coiffed and neatly parted on the left. He was immaculately suited in handmade, 3-piece Edwardian fashion suit topped off by a longish lounge coat. His vest sported a gold watch chain and fob emblazoned, University of Chicago. His high-buttoned shoes glistened, even in the firelight, of highly polished Italian leather. As any king should be, he was crowned, but by a silk top hat. He was obviously a rich man, a very rich man. Perhaps the richest man in the world, John Blue mused. He strode out of the firelight in an elegant manner to the edge of the clearing where a circular front, closed cab, 2-horse carriage awaited. The coats of the matched ebony-colored carriage horses glistened in the flickering firelight. "Let us go, sir," the most elegant of Ishpizin called out impatiently to John Blue. "We are wasting time." "Time, sir, is money and I will not waste money. Willful waste makes woeful want, my mother always said, and my mother was always right. Money, bucks, wampum, bread, dough, mammon," observed John Blue under his breath, "so, that's what will drive this realm, in addition to the black-suited, bead coachman." Wasting no more precious time, he entered the coach with the Ishpizin. "Take us out there, James," he called to the coachman. There, wondered John Blue, where was there? He was still working on where here was. His question was answered in an instant, as James coaxed the carriage horses into the black nothingness, rickety-tickety, rockety-tockety, bump. The carriage emerged from the darkened wood onto a magnificently maintained road, suitable for even a horseless carriage. The road sign said, Kykwa 798 miles. "I guess we'll be here a long time before we get there." John Blue's head sank in his hand. Once again, that airy sleeping sickness overtook him, the one with the cardamom aftertaste. In what seemed merely mid-thought, John Blue was awakened by the rumble, bumble-jumble of the carriage wheels on a different surface. In the distance, John Blue saw an immense mansion house standing about 4 stories tall. There were candles lighted in each window. There must have been 100, or more, so many, that the entire outline of the mansion house was clearly visible even late against an early evening darkened sky. The candle crescendo echoed onto the waters of a great river. The mansion house was surrounded by meticulously manicured hedges that stretched as far in every direction as the eye could see, especially in the dark, coming to a point in the center of the front yard, and turning toward the road. As John Blue took in the scene, his gaze was fastened on the tree-lined lane that lay in front of them on their night flight toward the now visible massive circular drive around in front of the main door. It was to that point that James skillfully rested the bouncing buggy. He debuggied and ran round to the side, to assist the still unidentified Ishpizin. John Blue debuggied himself, obviously not holding center stage in this act of the drama. "Would you honor us with your presence at our Christmas dinner, sir?" he intoned with an elegant yet condescendingly Knickerbocker nod of countenance, gesturing with his top hat toward the double French front door looming large behind the massive Roman arch of the front porch. John Blue took the bait, and bounded up the marble steps to the massive porch, followed immediately by the man and James, who hurried to get the door for them. As the door was flung open, John Blue was yet again almost blinded by light, the light of the Christmas tree in the left center of the hall flanking a spiral staircase. This was no ordinary Christmas tree. No, this was the quintessential tree, the tree all other trees wished they could be. Under it in neatly nestled rows lay the presents, many presents, presents of every size, wrapped in paper of every color and description. Even the boughs were exquisite. "If I were a kid," thought John Blue, "I would think I had died and gone to heaven." But he wasn't, and he hadn't. Turning toward the right, they entered the oak-paneled drawing-room, which lay behind the second Roman arch. John immediately noticed the detail of the woodworking on the walls. The ceiling must have been 16 feet high, and the prism glass chandelier hung in the center, lighting the whole room, and more, too, if it wanted to. "Granddaddy!" cheered a veritable gaggle of youngsters, rushing up to the man, whom John Blue was beginning to discern. The man kneeled and greeted all the small children, and rising, an elegant lady, obviously his wife, with a perfunctory kiss. John Blue noticed what appeared to be grown sons and daughters and their spouses, business associates, and some even unaccounted-for people, who fit in rather well to the festive occasion. The Ashpizin was about to introduce John Blue, when he was interrupted by the butler, announcing dinner. "Dinner is served, sir." And some dinner it turned out to be. Back across the entry hall they entered the dining room. A dizzying array of materials decorated the dining room: stained glass, stenciled patterns, hand painting, carved woodwork, and gilding. It featured a fully dressed Christmas dinner table, the length of which would have to be measured in cubits, John Blue thought. The table was set with the finest of china, really from China, and English goblets at each place. There were enough forks, John Blue speculated, for every Ludlow mine worker to dig 16 tons of No. 9 coal. By a bit of snooping amid the merriment of the moment, John Blue spied a nickname penned in calligraphy upon the place card at the head of the table's head: JDR. "As I thought, this Ashpizin's not a king, he's a baron," John Blue nodded knowingly to himself. Finding that he had been labeled as honored guest on the place card seated at Siege Perilous at the baron's right, he made his way there and stood behind his chair, noting that all the dinner guests did the same. Like the reverend father of a newly born spiritual congregation, the baron stood rather stiffly behind his massive oaken captain's chair. His wife, from all the way down the table at the foot, asked in an accustomed way, "Dear, would you say grace for us? Our dear Heavenly Father, we come to Thee on this, the greatest of celebrations, the recognition of the birth of Thy Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ, whom Thou givest to us to take away our sins, both great and small. We thank Thee that in Thy divine beneficence, Thou hast seen fit to so save us. We thank Thee for the blessings that Thou givest us from Thy bounty, and receive them in a spirit of humility and gratefulness. We ask that Thou wouldest bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies, and our bodies to Thy service, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen." As they all sat down, John Blue turned to the baron and remarked, "Wow, that was some blessing. You must be a very religious man." "I should say so," fumbled John Blue for an appropriate response to such a profoundly holy statement. The meal was served sumptuously, featuring all the delicacies that one could expect: imagine, cherry stone oysters and beds of cress, consomme la royal, broiled salmon, lobster sauce, parisienne potatoes, turkey, chestnut stuffing, cranberry sauce, boiled rice, creamed onions, shaddock sherbet, canvas-back duck, fox grape jelly, lettuce salad, French dressing, mince pie, pumpkin custard, nuts, raisins, fruits, and coffee. The conversation was a mix of familial frivolity, banter, more serious, light-hearted talk of plans, hopes, and dreams, and please pass the oysters. After an hour or more of feasting, John Blue, along with everyone else, he assumed, found himself pleasantly filled with all the good things of life wrought by the hands of the patriarch, the Baron. In a few minutes, the Baron turned to John Blue, who, not having any input into all these esoteric conversations, had kept remarkably silent. "Would you, sir, care to repair to my tea house, our place to have serious talks?" Of course, John Blue nodded approvingly, assuming that such was the real reason he was here, apparently at a place called Kaikut, and not to eat oysters Rockefeller, or however they had been deliciously prepared. John Blue followed the Baron, leaving the grand mansion house following a torch-ear and hedge-lined path toward the tea house. The tea house was not only a place for conversation, it was, itself, a conversation, a Japanese-style tea house nestled in a Japanese garden, crossing over a gentle brook. Once inside, the pair seated themselves. The conversation was light at first, with the Baron regaling John Blue about his upbringing, his absent, ne'er-do-well father, and his truly sainted mother. They were about to get down to business, whatever that business was, when they were interrupted by the butler, who asked, "Would sir and the gentleman care for brandy?" "Brandy?" queried John Blue, not able to resist the tongue-in-cheek sarcasm. "What cheer?" "I believe it would be cognac, Jules Robin 1858. "May I suggest that the gentleman will find it quite satisfactory," retorted the unflappable butler in a cultured put-down of his plebeian guest. "Yes, quite," John Blue returned volley, knowing that he had not held serve against a real professional. The Baron nodded, and the butler was off on his alcoholic errand. John Blue now began what he perceived as his interrogation of his subject, the Baron. "Back at the Whitechapel, I got the impression from that I was to learn what I could from you. So far, I am somewhat on sensory overload. You appear to have everything that money can buy, as they say, whoever they be or are." "I suppose that is true," his subject began, "but I have learned also that, as they also say, money can't buy everything. It can't buy happiness, and it can't buy the goodwill of your fellow men. It certainly can't buy God's favor." "Well said, sir," John Blue was beginning, when there came a knock at the door. It was Mr. Charles Millard Pratt, the Baron's personal secretary. "Sir," interrupted the secretary in an urgent tone, "there has been a development that requires your immediate attention. There has been trouble at the mine, the Ludlow mine in Colorado, the one where there have been some labor disputes." "What seems to be the nature of the trouble?" asked a concerned Baron. "Well, sir, there seems to be an uprising, a riot of sorts among the miners." "Is this about their pay again?" exclaimed a growingly more exasperated Baron. "Yes, sir, and about their living conditions." "Their living conditions? Aren't company houses and a company store good enough for them?" "Why, we provide everything they need to live." The Baron did not like the sound of serious, and the two men excused themselves for a moment, leaving the room briefly. In the meantime, John Blue noted what he assumed to be the day's paper, the New York Times. It was dated April 29, 1914. "April 20th, 1914, exclaimed John Blue out loud. But then, again, nothing that was happening on the adventure of national security was surprising to him. On returning, the two men were still talking. "What kind of staff does the mining company have on hand?" the Baron asked. "Not enough to handle the situation," replied his lackey. "Then take a telegram to the governor." "Ah, Shafroth, sir?" "Yes, Governor Shafroth. I'm counting on him along with our men there, to take care of this unfortunate situation." The Honorable John F. Shafroth, Governor State of Colorado. Stop regarding uprising at Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, Ludlow, Colorado. Stop. I'm informed of labor uprising at the mine. Stop. Please be so kind as to activate a sufficient number of National Guard troops to put down same. Stop. Use whatever force or coercion necessary. Stop. Regards, J.D.R. Stop. "Very good, sir," Pratt obliged. "Will that be all?" "Yes," the Baron almost yelled, "we've got to put those miners in their place, even if it means burning them out." Then Pratt rethought the decision. "What about injuries, or even deaths? How will this be received by the press?" "Hang the press. stormed the Baron. "We've got to show the union organizers who is their boss. Then we'll have the Foundation take over the reparations," the Baron more calmly whispered almost through his clenched teeth, "or the damages." "Very good, sir," Pratt backpedaled both verbally and physically, once again leaving the two men alone in the tea house. Turning to Joe Blue, the Baron stated, "Those miners are trying for a union. The union will of course want higher wages and better living conditions for the miners. That's going to cost us a lot of money and might in the long run make that business unprofitable, and we can't have that. If there's anything I have learned, it's that everything must, in the long run, turn a profit, everything. John Blue started for a moment at what he was seeing as an incongruity within the mind of the Baron. On the one hand, he saw a great man of prayer, who appeared to be quite spiritual. Yet, on the other, he saw a ruthless businessman, who would stop at nothing to turn a profit. How, he wondered, could the Baron justify himself, could he resolve this dichotomy? This brought him to ask, "Sir, you appear to be a very religious man." "Religious?" interrupted the Baron, "I'm not sure you could label me as such. However, my mother always raised me to read the Bible, and to do what it says. I think I have always been faithful to that teaching. I have never smoked tobacco or drunk whiskey. I have served my church faithfully for a long time, everything from Sunday school teacher to janitor, yes, even janitor. Yes, sir, it appears that your spiritual heart is in what some would call the right place. Yet, tell me how you justify such harsh treatment of your fellow human being, the miners, and their families," John Blue pressed. "Justify it?" shot back the Baron in a soliloquy that would be worthy of Shakespeare. "I don't need to justify it or anything else to you or to anybody. What you are calling justification, I call weakness. Look here, sir, I'll have you know that I am the richest man in the world, and I didn't get to this point by being weak, or by justifying myself to anyone. When I was just a young lad, I went to school to be a simple bookkeeper. My modest goals were to make $100,000, and to live 100 years. I have far surpassed the former, and I planned very much on making the latter. My mother always taught me that nothing should be wasted, not time, not money." The Baron's rant continued, "Business is business. You may not agree with me, sir, and it certainly is your right to be wrong, but if one to be a success, one must separate religion from business. I do what I have to do so as not to waste money. If that means that bunch of coal dusty miners and their miserable families live in undesirable conditions, or if I have to buy up a failing company for pennies on the dollar, then turn it around, to make myself and my family a profit, then I will do it. If it means that I will leverage whatever influence I have acquired to force my competitors out of business, I will do that, too. Business is business, never forget it, he seethed again. John Blue observed, "That's awfully harsh, sir, isn't it? So, you are saying that spirituality is spirituality and business is business?" John Blue attempted to summarize for his own information and understanding. "More bad news from the mine, sir. There has been an incident," again interrupted Mr. Pratt, "but the mine personnel, our private detectives, and the National Guard have the situation in hand. It was a bit drastic, but it is now handled." "Very good, sir," Mr. Pratt solicited over his shoulder, as he left the room. There was silence in the room, as the two men assimilated what had just happened. During the silence, John Blue had time to contemplate what he had just seen. However, his contemplation was cut short by the now familiar ooga of Moshorn outside the tea house. Turning to the Baron, John Blue said, "By your leave, sir, I suppose it is time for me to go. I will leave your miners for you to deal with." "Very good," said the Baron, confident that he had handled this situation in the appropriate manner, rising and shaking John Blue's hand cordially. John Blue walked out of the tea house, and as expected found Mose Cord Winchester awaiting him. "Did SEI learn anything of note?" "Yes," answered John Blue, "but I don't know what I'm supposed to do with what I know." Mo reassured, "Somewhat, perhaps time will tell." John Blue rode in silence for a while, thinking about the conversation and the events of the evening. While he was stricken by the beauty of the house, the elegance of the meal and the graciousness of the family and invited guests, he could not get away from the complete and utter separation that the Baron had made between his spiritual life and his business life. After a few moments of silence, Mo asked back, peering into his rearview mirror, "Did Seid find the evening profitable?" "Profitable?" repeated John Blue. "You see, that's the thing. To the Baron, life is a ledger sheet measured solely in profit and loss. I find it very interesting that he is so completely able to separate what, by all appearances, is a very deep spiritual life from his business. Can you make that separation?" If Seid would permit Mo a question, would Seid consider it a profitable life, if he gained all the wealth in the world, but in the end found that his soul was hollow, a shell not even containing air? John Blue was intrigued at the question. "What do you mean by his soul is hollow?" If Mo may be permitted to answer Seid's question with another question, if Seid peels an onion layer by layer, what would Seid have in the end? Would Seid have the irreducible core, or would Seid ultimately have nothing? In other words, is a man's soul made of a core wrapped in all the things that he is, or do all the things that he is add up to his core? John Blue was amazed that such a deeply philosophical question should come from a cab driver, but then again, Mo was certainly not your ordinary cabbie. "I have here, Mo, that question being posed by great philosophers and they arrive at different answers." "Seid," observed Mo, "this question is not about the onion but about the core." Mo knows that there are many answers to this question, but what is important to Mo, to you, Seid, is what does Seid believe the answer to be? "To tell you the truth," John Blue admitted, "at the moment, I really don't know." "Very well, Seid, there is much more to discover. Would Seid care for shy? I've had you shy before with some dizzying effects, perhaps I will pass." "Seid, it will be a long trip, some shy might make the trip shorter," urged Mo, "and shy is already made." "Okay, shy it is." With that, John Blue found in the console a warm pot of shy surrounded by demitasse cups. The set looked like rare Phoenician blue glass, perhaps hand-blown. Its beauty and the aroma of the spices steeping in the pot made the shy all the more inviting. John Blue carefully poured a cup, quaffed it gingerly, and floated away to what he expected would be Shangri-La, the land of dreams. In that land, however, he found himself standing as a gladiator in the middle of a Roman Colosseum. Throngs of people ringed him in their seats and standing, screaming at fever pitch. "Off with his arm!" yelled a toga-clad figure seated with great pomp in the imperial box. Perhaps this was John Blue's apparition of great Caesar's ghost, or perhaps it was the effects of the cardamom. In either case, at Caesar's command, another gladiator entered the arena. He was fully armored in a gold breastplate over his tunic of red and helmeted likewise in gold with a red plume, and was armed with a scutum in his left hand, 2 piles slung over his back and a short pogo stuck in his girdle. Of more instant importance, however, he held in his right hand a gladius hispaniensis, his fighting sword, which appeared to John Blue in that moment to be about 6 feet long. The gladiator approached John Blue, who was rapidly turning into John Yellow, and with a single sweep of his artistic arc cleanly severed John Blue's left arm so quickly that the blood refused to flow. "Now the other arm," Caesar ordered, and it was so, and his legs, one following the other, and it was so. And his head. And it was so. "Where is John Blue?" yelled someone from the crowd. Others took up the cheer, "Where is John Blue? Where is John Blue? Where is John Blue?" "Non-Tim, non-Tim, not so much," sighed a now very thankful it was only a dream John Blue, as the cab rolled to a stop near the campfire that, for some eerie reason, had not diminished its intensity in the slightest, no matter how long they had been gone, however long that was. They exited the Westchester and returned to the stone circling the fire. Once again, John Blue beheld the 4 cowl-covered and robed Ashpeason, apparently including the Baron, seated in their accustomed places. John Blue joined them. As if on cue, a second Ashpeason stood, allowing his cowl-crowned robe to drop to his shoulders then as to the ground. "Canto for Purgatorio." It is in accordance with nature, that money should increase from natural goods, not from money itself. Fors Donati, Dante, Purgatorio, Canto 23, line 4. Much to John Blue's surprise, the second Ashpezian stood before him in an orange jumpsuit, beltless, and wearing flip-flops. His hair was disheveled and his beard badly needed trimming. He was gaunt and pale in appearance, and in his eyes, John Blue could see the faraway look of a man who had experienced a great loss, a great sorrow, a great and unpardonable sin. From the shadows, walked two middle-aged men wearing dark military-style suits and garrison caps. On their breastplate, John Blue could just make out, Cold Mountain State Penitentiary, Guard. Mo, who had been standing all along, whispered to John Blue, "I'll see you later." "This will be hard." "Great," thought John Blue sarcastically to himself. "It will be," came the now expected verbal response from Mo to the nonverbal expression, "it will be, in the end." As usual, this was not that comforting to John Blue. The two guards approached the second Ashpezian and John Blue. They held manacles and shackles in their hands, with which they tethered the Ashpezian and John Blue. After so beshackling them, the guards chained the two together and led, hobbling, into the darkness. John Blue heard the rattling of a truck engine. As it turned out, he heard the state's 1949 International Harvester DT 466 paddy wagon. "Get in," ordered one of the guards, who climbed into the wagon with the two prisoners. The other man mounted the cab and drove it into the night. As the darkness inside was palpable, the three men in the business end of the vehicle sat in silence for quite some time. John Blue had no idea what the other two were thinking, but he was thinking that he wished he were somewhere else. He mused, "Where is Mo with my shy?" Time seemed to stand still in the wagon. Before long, John Blue could hear the van turn onto a gravel road and then stop. He could hear the faint voices of men outside, then he heard what sounded like the opening then closing of a rusty gate. The back door opened, and the guard stepped out. He was joined by the driver and by another man dressed in a guard's uniform. The prisoners were pushed down the hall, which John Blue could now see was lined with cells. Inside the cells, he saw men, lots of men. They were jeering and clanging on the bars with their tin coffee cups. At the end of the hall, directly in the center, was a light green, windowless, unbarred door with a giant lock, into which the guard inserted one of the multitude of keys that occupied his massive, circular key ring. He motioned for the two to enter, and they did. The room was rather small, with only two bunk beds and a sink and toilet, both made of metal and both badly in need of cleaning and repair. John Blue noticed the drip of the sink immediately and saw the puddle of water on the unpainted, concrete floor under it. The walls were the same concrete except painted that awful shade of light green, that reminded John Blue of the color of the walls of his old office, the color he liked to refer to as state green. A single light bulb was caged into the ceiling. There was a small slot in the door, apparently for a food tray. After the guard removed their shackles and manacles and left, slamming the huge door behind him with an intimidating boom, clash, click, that put an exclamation point on the events of the last day, the two collapsed into their bunks. John Blue now found himself becoming used to finding himself baffled. This instance was no exception. He tried to sort it out. "Okay, I'm a prisoner in a state penal institution, the Cold Mountain State Penitentiary according to the guards' uniforms. I'm in a cell, apparently a maximum security cell, but who in the name of Charles Manson is this guy? Is he an axe murderer, a serial killer, a notorious pedophile, the Lindbergh kidnapper, the Count of Monte Cristo, Hannibal Lecter, John Mason, who? What? Preacher?" The other guy broke the silence. "I'm a preacher." "A preacher?" John Blue half stated, half questioned. "If I'm right, we're in a really bad situation here in some maximum security prison cell. Why is a preacher here? I mean, the last time I checked, they don't put preachers in jail for bad oratory, do they?" "I killed a man," was the reply, "and if you don't mind, I've got a lot to get off my chest, and time is short. It will soon be midnight." "Go ahead, shoot." The words passed John Blue's lips, Before he thought what he was saying. Rethinking his reply, he recoiled. I mean, tell me about it. I guess I'm an okay listener. I am trained as a Baptist disaster chaplain, and this whole day will certainly appear to qualify as just that, a disaster. Oh, never mind, I got off into my own stuff for a minute. Go ahead, tell me about it. Besides, who are you, anyway? My name is John Bunyan Good, Johnny Be Good, the man began. Really, Johnny Be Good? More audibly than he had intended, John Blue interrupted. Yeah, Johnny Be Good. My mother thought it was a good idea. You see, she was a Sunday school teacher, as had been her mother, and the church pianist, and had been for a long time. I was raised around the church. Our house was 2 doors down from the church. Preachers came and went around our place. I guess I knew a lot of them, too. Some went on to great things. One was president of the state convention, one became a famous evangelist, one went on to be a seminary professor, and so on, though one did end up selling roofing. Selling, I guess that's where the trouble all started. I was selling myself. I really admired them, their status, a sort of celebrity, at least to my way of thinking. All I ever wanted to be was a preacher. They let me be the music director at the church by the time I was 13. I was pretty good at it, too. One preacher even wanted me to go on and study music, but music director, it was second banana. I wanted to be the main act. The main act? Questioned John Blue. I would have expected that there'd be some mention of faith or God or something like that by now. Wouldn't that be the main act? Yeah, that's the problem. I got caught up in what I saw as the celebrity of it all. I know that to most people a small-town preacher is not a celebrity, but to me he was, and I wanted it. I wanted it badly. I sold myself on the idea that religion was the answer to all my little boy and teenage issues. Believe, you've got to believe. Believe, in what? Believe in who? John Blue was mesmerized. I never really worked that out for myself. I developed what you'd call a theology of the way. The way, isn't that what the early Christians called the belief in Jesus? Quizzed John Blue. Sure, I see you're up on your buzzwords, but that's not it. It's the way, as in the way we've always done it. I let myself get caught up in the worship of that way. I sold myself on it. Religion, that's the way, being good, doing right, going to church, inviting kids to Bible study, prayer in schools, posting the 10 Commandments, all that stuff, religious stuff. Well, let me ask you a question, Johnny replied. What if you met a girl and she was everything a man could want, and you married her because it was convenient, because it had a lot of advantages, but in your heart you didn't love her? Would that be a good thing? What if there was someone else you loved more, and that someone was yourself? Would that be a good thing? I'm not sure. John Blue hesitated in answer. You're asking for absolutes, and in matters of love, a feeling that comes and goes, ebbs and flows, rises and falls, I don't think there are any absolutes. It's relative. Well, maybe in that kind of love it is relative, feelings being what they are, feelings. Maybe that was not a good example, but what I'm trying to say is that I loved it more than I loved him. He was not my savior, religion, was. Eventually, John Blue's mind left what was a very stimulating conversation, a look into this guy's heart, but he began wondering what this had to do with their current circumstance. I am trying to see the relevance to this. Here's the relevance, shot back Johnny Be Good. You are, or become, what you think. I read that somewhere. If religion becomes your prime mover, you could say it becomes your God. In the worship of your God, you should do anything it commands. If you think yourself to be his servant, nothing is impossible, nothing. I went on to seminary and became a preacher, an evangelist. Being a gifted speaker, I started to draw a crowd. We started to play to packed houses. The houses got bigger and bigger. We went from tents and supermarket parking lots to the biggest church in the town, to the big stadium. We were the big time, radio, TV, even our own movie company. We were the big time. We had an empire that had to be protected. That's where it all started to unravel. You get used to the celebrity, people coming to pick you up at the airport, people buying your meals, the best hotels, the best of everything, everything. But everything costs money, lots of money. I had to start juggling the books. Nothing big at first, just fixing cash flow problems. To scotch things up, I started using my contacts to sell church bonds. You know, you can make a lot of money selling church bonds to gullible congregations. But that went south. I had to fix the fix, and fix the fix that fixed the fix, if you know what I mean. It had all gotten out of control. Then that's when my accountant, the one who was supposed to fix the fix, decided he needed to fix me. He was going to the IRS, maybe going public. I didn't know what he was going to do. I got scared. I could see my empire crashing around me, I could see myself defrocked and weeping on my own TV show, I could see myself in Maxwell prison doing 2 to 5 for income tax evasion. My savior had become my adversary. I had to fix this, myself. When you become the big time, you meet a lot of people, some good, some not so good. Sometimes the not so good people, though, are the people you need. As I said, I had an accountant to fix things, but I also had a guy to fix people. He fixed it, he fixed the accountant. He set him up to take the fall for the finances, but when it became apparent that the fix wasn't permanent enough, I had him fix him permanently. The plane crashed, killing all on board, all including the accountant. The records were burned in the wreckage, so I thought I was in the clear, but I wasn't, and it all eventually fell apart. It's funny how when you start off in basically the right direction, but get just a little off, you eventually realize that you weren't in the right direction in the first place. Was religion ever my savior, or was it my adversary? I don't know. Maybe I was my adversary, or at least my pride was my adversary. Whatever the case, my pride and my adversary are going to light up the night. Just as John B. Good finished, the great door opened and John Blue could see 2 men standing there, a guard and a real chaplain. John B. Good, the guard, perfunctorily put forth, "It is time to carry out the sentence of law." Good slowly rose and walked toward the door. The chaplain took him by the arm and they began to walk down the long green hall. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And then the chaplain's voice was drowned out by the goodbyes of all the other prisoners in the cell block and the clanging of their tin cups on the bars. John Blue just sat there amid the surreal picture that had just painted itself. It seemed that he had just heard his own story repeated, not in the detail and the fact, but in the tenor and the import. "Ooga, ooga," Mo vocalized, his voice getting louder, as he walked up the green hall toward John Blue's now open cell door. "I told you I would not leave you. It's time to go." John Blue didn't even take time to wonder how. He just noticed that as they walked out, there was no sound or movement from the other prisoners. It was as if time and space were frozen, as if by someone outside them. Somehow, that didn't surprise him. Doors silently opened in front of them and just as silently closed behind them. There was no slam, there was no clink, there was no clang, just silence and stillness. Savoring the silence, John Blue walked alongside Mo until they reached the cord. He allowed Mo to open the rear door for him and crawled in. The way to downfall is a broad path accessed by a very wide gate, is it not, Syed? Observed Mo confidently, unbidden, but in perfect appropriateness. Does Syed desire that way or the other way? John Blue remained pensively and uncharacteristically muted. In a moment, and in a different, more solicitous voice, Mo offered, "Does Syed want a cup of chai?" John Blue did not hesitate. "Yes, I believe I do." Canto 5 Intermezzo. He listens well who takes notes. Dante, Divina Commedia, Canto 15, line 99. John Blue savored the chai. He had grown accustomed to the taste of its spices, cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. And the effect, well, that was another story. "Mo," John Blue broke the silence, "I'm tired." Can we just sit somewhere and talk a while? It will be as Esiad says. With that John Blue drifted away. When he awoke, the court was stopping in front of Chasers in downtown Lebanon. John Blue and Mo went in. Unfortunately, it was karaoke night. John Blue was not in the mood for karaoke. I hate amateurs, he observed. Does Esiad know the source of the word amateur? Mo yelled over very mediocre soprano, belting out feelings into the karaoke mic. It comes from the French amour, meaning love. An amateur is one who does what he does for the love of the thing, while a professional merely does a thing for gain to be gotten. Which is Esiad? Does Esiad live life for the love of life, or go about for the gain to be gotten? I'm not sure I can answer that, John Blue yelled in reply, a bit miffed at being put on the spot, especially a loud spot. After all, this was supposed to be his fact-finding trip. I guess it depends on what the definition of gain is, doesn't it? Perhaps, Esiad, but how would Esiad define gain, and is there a place for the getting of gain, while in the pursuit of the love of life? Whoa, slow down, John Blue urged, one question at a time. 1,000 pardons, Esiad. Mo only desires to guide Esiad to the heart of the matter. And what exactly is the heart of the matter? John Blue stalled, realizing that he was philosophically out of his depth. Mo sighed a deep sigh. May Mo rephrase the question? Who is the heart of the matter? In the first Ashpizan, was it Esiad and or it's something outside Esiad? Does Esiad remember the first Ashpizan? What did he value in life? What or who was at the center of his life? Did the center of his life bring him happiness or concern? I think I see what you mean, yelled John Blue, suddenly realizing that the music had stopped, and he was yelling to the whole establishment. Dropping his voice he continued. He was the richest man in the world, but I guess you'd say he was hollow inside. He seemed to have a very strange Dr. Jekyll Mr. Hyde thing going on, trying to balance his own interest with being good. That could not have left much room for anything or anyone else at the center of his heart, could it? Esiad has well said, observed Mo, there is no spirit of love there, I think, only a spirit of duty. There is a hollow man, an empty soul. Mo does not like to see such men. Mo hopes Esiad is not such a man. But, what of the second Ashpizan, who was at his center? At that moment, the karaoke machine, interrupting, fired up again, this time with a rather large fella whining, please release me, let me go. Oh, please is right, muttered John Blue. For a moment, neither he nor Mo spoke, or more precisely, yelled. The loud-voiced but quiet brain time allowed John Blue to consider the Reverend John Be Good. John Blue felt very sorry for him. The Reverend thought he had started out right, but maybe because whatever, or whoever was at his center got pushed aside, leaving no room for anyone but himself, maybe he didn't start out right in the first place. Mo, what do you think about the Reverend? Mo thinks that pride precedes a fall and great pride precedes a great fall. The Ashpizan fell greatly, did fall greatly. Only death could release him from himself, could it not? Yes, I mean no, stuttered John Blue, unsure how to respond to the phrasing of Mo's question. All is well, Esiad, reassured Mo, Mo knows. And the karaoke machine blared, to know you is to love you, and I do, love you. It was a mellow moment for John Blue. He was beginning to understand, but only beginning. There was more. In the time that it takes the wind to blow the last leaf of autumn circling the night into winter, Mo had whisked John Blue back to dark and Whitechapel. Walking into the darkness of it, John Blue and Mo passed the pillars of the Amied, through the arras and through the back of the Whitechapel. As John Blue had expected, maybe even dreaded, they found the fire and the four Ashpizan just as they had left them, whatever unit of time it was ago. Candle 6 Paradiso? Mo addressed the assemblage. One last Ashpizan must make himself known. Can he lead John Blue through the Inferno and the Purgatorio to Paradiso? We shall see. With it as a bidding, the last Ashpizan stood, his cowl and robe floating to the ground, as though a brown snowflake. He was a tall, barrel-chested man dressed in a red denim shirt and jeans. He had a scruffy beard and wore a leather vest, boots, and a bandana around his neck. He was crowned by a light-colored, well-worn, 6-inch crown, pinch front, triangle creased, and silver belly cowboy hat, ringed in sweat, partially hidden by the snakeskin headband. "Follow me, pilgrim," he ordered in a deliberately slow lilting drawl, that caused him to swallow then spit out each word with the confidence of someone who had done this before. As he began to walk into the darkness, his walk, more like a 1 foot in front of the other lumbering, as were his looks and drawl, ignited instant recognition in John Blue. "Is that you, John?" John Blue incredulously inquired. "Call me Marion," the Ishpezian replied. "Here, I'm who I really am, not who or what you think I am. But be that as it may, pilgrim, I may have some answers for ya." John Blue and Marion walked into a wood, Marion dressed for a hike in the woods in his boots, jeans, vest, and hat, and John Blue, well, not so much, dressed in a scratchy wool monk's robe and sandals. "I hate sandals," John Blue thought as he guessed that by now he along with Marion were stepping into Ring 1, of what Moe had called Dante's woods, and he wondered what would happen. Would he see all the living allegories that Dante Alighieri did? Would he hear truth? Would Marion protect him from untoward occurrences? Would Moe? As they walked, Marion reached into his well-worn back pocket, and pulled out what appeared to be a plug of tobacco wrapped in a leather pouch. From the front pocket of his jeans, he retrieved a pocket knife and cut off a hunk, offering a piece to John Blue. "Don't swallow it, pilgrim," he drawled almost with a hint of glee, really hoping John Blue would. John Blue hadn't chewed tobacco since he was a football manager, in what he liked to call a previous millennium, but he took it and bit it. It bit back. This was stronger than the old beech nut he remembered from his freshman high school days. One jaw and his mouth started to burn. Another and his eyes began to water, a third and his head started to swim. With that, he spat it out, wiping his saliva-filled mouth on the sleeve of his monk's robe. The scratchiness of the wool irritated his already inflamed lips, and he spat again, several times. Marion just laughed at him. "Greenhorn," he snickered. By now, Marion and John Blue had reached a clearing. In the clearing, John Blue saw 4 horses tied to a tree. One was white, one roan, one black, and one pale. The clearing was lighted eerily by torches. Marion mounted the white one, swinging his massive right leg over the saddle skillfully, and he motioned for John Blue to mount up. He did, but not as skillfully. He hadn't ridden since the summer he rode horseback all over Old Baldy and the New Mexico mountains at camp. Soon he found, though, that riding a horse, like riding a bicycle as they say, is not something you forget. In a few minutes he was cantering cheerily alongside Marion. Splitting the saturnine silence with a lack of anything important to say, John Blue voiced valuelessly in an attempt to break the ice over the clip-hitty-clop of the horses' hooves. "What are the horses' names?" John Blue called out, somewhat anticipating the answer, given the bizarre and surreal setting. At that, Marion slowed sudden to a walk with John Blue joining him. Marion peered at John Blue, his brow deeply furrowed. "Lame," he retorted. "Lame, the horse is named Lame," echoed back John Blue. "No, pilgrim, the horse is not named Lame. You know, nobody ever asked me that before. I guess this here white one is Duke and the pale one you're on, I'll call her Buttermilk. I suppose the other 2 are Silver and Scout," John Blue quipped with a sarcastic smile. "I would have thought them to be named something like, Conquest, War, Famine, and Death, or Pestilence maybe?" "Pestilence? What kind of a cowboy would name his horse Pestilence?" shot back and insulted Marion, turning abruptly to his left in the saddle, and spitting tobacco on the ground. "Sounded like a good name for this one I'm riding, or trying to ride," defended John Blue, "but then again I guess it all depends on your world view." At this John Blue figured it was time to forget frivolity and get serious. He began to philosophize. Marion just stared at him blankly. "That brings me to the subject I guess I came here for, and it probably isn't horses' names. What is the answer to the question that I didn't yet ask?" Marion just stared at him blankly, cocking his head in a motion that reminded John Blue of a jaybird looking at a bird feeder, slightly sideways back and forth one way and then the other, as if he'd never really thought about that before. He spat again on the ground and began to look off distantly. Eventually, after an uncomfortably long pause, he said, "Plastics." "Plastics?" John Blue repeated. "Plastics?" "Nah, Pilgrim," joked Marion, "I was just joshing you. It ain't plastics, it's truth, justice and the American way." "Truth, justice and the American way," John Blue repeated, thinking as incredulously as he had for the plastics answer. "If you're here for that, you're gonna end up fighting every politician in the country." "That sounds like something Superman would say." "Superman? Superman flew with children, John Blue. It's a fairy tale." "This is real," corrected Marion. Somehow, John Blue wasn't particularly comforted by that thought. After staring briefly at each other, they began again to pick up the pace, and to trot briskly through the woods. Finally, they ascended the side of an arroyo that overlooked what appeared to be the lights of a small city. There they paused as if looking out over the plains in a painting by Charlie Russell. "I guess it's who we are, or what we are or what we want to be," replied Marion. "I think it's the ideal of every red-blooded American. We all want truth, we all want justice, and, I think we all want the American way." Passing over truth and justice, as a bit open-ended for a conversation on horseback, and zeroing in on the American way, John Blue asked, "So, what do you think is the American way?" "You know, it's the American dream, a wife, a nice family, a nice house, a good job, a secure retirement, friends that like you, that sort of thing," Marion pontificated. "So how do you get those things?" John Blue queried, pressing the point. "You get it the way I did," said Marion, "by working for it. If you work hard, you'll get it. If you work hard, nothing is beyond your reach. If you can conceive it, you can achieve it," parodied Marion unknowingly of the 1937 granddaddy of all motivational books, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. "So, what you are saying," summarized John Blue, "is that you can achieve the American dream by earning it." "I guess you'd say that," replied Marion. "You earn it, like a paycheck, you earn it." "So are you telling me that life is all about the American way, and that the means toward that end is working hard and earning it?" "Sure," said Marion, sounding not unlike a 1980s Smith Barney commercial, "you earn it." John Blue pressed the point, really trying to understand what Marion was saying, maybe even trying to help Marion understand what Marion was saying. "But, the American dream is a concept, it's not a thing." "How can you earn a thing?" "If it can be earned, that would imply that it can be bought?" "If that is your definition of success, can it be bought?" "You can't buy success, can you?" "I guess in a way, you can, you must," said Marion, "either with money or with sweat." "So, life is all about earning the American way?" John Blue pulled up short and stared directly at Marion, who had no answer for him. "Does everybody want the American way, the American dream? What if you are not an American? What if you like where you live now, but you just want to go somewhere, to earn enough money to live? Does your everybody include all those John Blues too?" John Blue's inquisition was cut short of the kill because at that moment, out of the corner of his eye, John Blue caught the shadow of something moving, something sinister. "Don't move," interrupted Marion, regaining momentarily the self-confident voice to which John Blue had accustomed himself. "It's a sidewinder." Suddenly, the Crotalus horridus, the timber rattler, struck at the feet of the horses, and John Blue's steed Buttermilk churned her feet like a supercharged barrel Type 110-volt butter churn on 220, leaving Marion and Duke behind in the wake in their great gallop. For an instant, John Blue had visions of lonely Pony Express riders at full tilt flashing across the wide prairies, and fruited plain in a cloud of dust obscuring the flash of the horses' hooves. However, in the wild ride over hill and dale in the darkness, John Blue, not being the world's best horseman, lost control of the reins and was forced to resort to holding onto the saddle horn for dear life, like the runaway heroine in Tall in the Saddle, a Western B-movie. "Hoa!" he yelled, "Hoa! Hoa!" With that, he closed his eyes in anticipation of his inevitable integration with the trunk of a tree, or at least a nasty sudden stop after a less than graceful horseless freefall and sudden merging with the mud. However, at the very moment he thought all was lost, something began slowing his horse gradually. Opening his eyes, he glimpsed Mo riding at his side on a donkey. Mo grabbed the reins and brought Buttermilk to a halt. "Woo!" gasped John Blue, out of breath, with blood pressure somewhere near 190, 120 and nearly in cardiac arrest. "I thought I was done for." "Not to worry, Syed, Mo will save you." "I can't argue with that," panted John Blue along with his Buttermilk. On the way back, John Blue wondered what happened to his hero, Marion, why he, the great cowboy, had not come to his rescue, and why he was recused by a little Middle Eastern guy riding a donkey. Before long, they had cantered back to the campfire. John Blue noticed Marion's horse tied to a tree close to the fire. Marion was once again seated around the fire with the other two Ashpizim wearing his monk's robe, fully cowl-shrouded, saying nothing. Marion stood at his place by the fire and, as effortlessly as the cowl-crowned robe had before drifted to the turf, it floated upward, found its place. This and their misadventures were thankfully over. The Ashpizim rose as if bidden by an off-stage director and slowly walked in the night, disappearing into Dante's woods. John Blue sat by the fire with Mo, really just enjoying his company, saying nothing until the fire became but an ember and then ceased its glow. Mo stood, joined by John Blue, and they walked toward the back of Whitechapel. This time, they reversed their entrance into the woods, angling through the arras and the amide until they walked out the front door. Mo drove John Blue back to the hotel. John Blue collapsed into his bed and slept, dreamlessly. Canto 7 Epilogus. Consider your origins, you were not made to live as brutes, but to follow virtue and knowledge. Ulysses to Virgil, Dante, Inferno, Canto 26, lines 119 through 120. Auga, Auga, once again awakened John Blue from his dreamless sleep. But this time, the horn did not signal a journey into the heart of darkness, Dante's woods. It was the bugle call to a different journey, the journey home. John Blue dressed, this time into his civils, the clothes in which he had arrived, those hours, or days, or decades, or whatever it was ago. In many regards, John Blue was sad to leave. He had learned much about himself and about what he believed. Most of all, he would miss Mo, his ever-present friend and protector. He had come to highly value Mo's take on what he, John Blue, had experienced, not to mention the awe in which viewed Mo's seeming endless ability to take him outside time and space. "Mo, I'm sure going to miss you," he allowed as they drove back to the tiny airport. "This has been a truly remarkable experience, and you have been a truly awe-inspiring person. I wish I could stay longer, I wish you could go with me." "Where I am going, Syed, you cannot go, but Mo's spirit will go with Syed. Everything Syed has seen and learned will be at Syed's fingertips. Syed's life will not be easier for having been here, I think, because Syed's eyes have been opened. Sometimes it is easier to walk around as a blind man, not seeing, easier, I think, but not better. Syed came here as Adam, as all other Adam, with a hollowness of heart, but now Syed's heart has been filled out. It will be harder, yes, because now Syed knows that everything is not as it appears to be. Syed now knows the truth. May Syed be freed by the truth, may Syed live in that truth, and may Syed speak from the truth, and soon, I think." With that, the Court Westchester, the only one of its kind, disappeared. John Blue heard the revving of the motor of Brian's Cessna. Brian was ready to leave, but Mo was not. He stood for a moment contemplating Mo's words. They sounded familiar, yet not so much. Perhaps he had heard the same words before, but now somehow changed in a way that challenged things that he had thought and believed. Changed, yes. The question was, whether he would be changed? The answer would come soon. As they taxied down the runway at home, John Blue, reflecting, was suddenly reminded of another, almost overlooked thing Mo said: "Not knaves, Syed, magi." wise men, in their own way, wise men 3 and a satrap, all pressed down, shaken together and running over for good measure. A satrap. John Blue repeated. I still have to meet a satrap. The satrap was waiting for John Blue, as he walked down the steps from the plane. Colonel William J. Donovan, Coordinator of Information, OSS, was waiting for John Blue, anxious for a report. What would he tell him? How would get him to believe it? John Blue thought as he anticipated the question, what happened? He hoped that the spirit of Mo would, indeed, guide him in his answers. However, Colonel Donovan had a different question for John Blue, as they sped to a nearby government office. Is Mo a threat to national security? That was how Colonel Donovan put it. John Blue thought a minute pensively, touching his 10 fingers together. Then he stopped the motion and slowly moved his fingers into a steepling gesture. Yes and no, he said, not meaning to sound ambiguous but rather precise. Yes, if people accept what Mo has shown me, he will change everything about them, everything about our society, everything about our world. I was afraid of that, worried Colonel Donovan. We are in a time of great turmoil. All we have held dear and believed is being challenged by those who mean us harm, maybe even by us ourselves. Our American and family values are at stake. We are in danger of becoming a nation populated by people that don't look or smell like we do. That's the thing that must be stopped. People like this Mo must be taught to think right if we are to survive, as we have over 2.5 centuries, a society of free men. Free men, really, is that what you believe? Do you want people to think right or just to think? Queried John Blue of the satrap. Could it be that a society will long survive built on the ideas that a colonel is higher than a cabbie, that he who dies with the most things wins, that power and influence will always rule the day, that we should love things and use people, that religion, whatever that means, is our salvation, that whatever the problem, the government can fix it, that we should never allow the public to cool off, that we should never admit a fault or wrong, that we should never concede that there may be some good in our enemy, that we should never leave room for alternatives, that we should never accept blame, that we should demonize our enemies, concentrating on them one at a time, that in so doing, we should blame them for everything that goes wrong? Tell me, Colonel Donovan, do we really think that people will believe a big lie sooner than a little one, and that if we repeat a big lie frequently enough people will sooner or later come to believe it? Colonel Donovan, if all that is what we believe at our core, then yes, Mo is a huge threat to that national security. Further, Colonel Donovan, if anyone believes in him, then that person should be ostracized from society and considered a leper. Better still, that person and anyone else like him should be concentrated in one place and re-educated to think right. John Blue could feel his face flush with the redness of blood raised in his righteous indignation. Perhaps he had said too much, he thought. Perhaps he had said too little. Perhaps he was not even the man that should ever have been sent on this mission. But then he remembered that the mission had come to him, that Mo had called him. Out of everyone else in this place, Mo had called him. Perhaps, he thought, he should tell everyone he met what had happened to him. And then he thought, perhaps I am changed. Somewhere in the somewhere and sometime in the sometime, John Blue could hear Mo answer him, yes, you are SEI'd, yes, you are. As John Blue walked out of the office, he slowly turned to Colonel Donovan and asked rhetorically, Colonel Donovan, what do you believe? Thus ends the story. Stay tuned for the glossary. Verbum or glossary. Dante's Woods. In Dante Alighieri's Divina Commedia, the protagonist enters a deep wood. In literature, woods usually represent a state of lostness or confusion. Gnosis, an anglicization of the Greek word, gnosis, mean to know from personally gained experience, as opposed to something taught in a book. Poem. For a number of years, John's Christmas poem has evolved into a story. Novella, literally, little novel, a short novel of between 17,500 and 50,000 words. Canto, a main division of a poem. The word is derived from the Italian word for song. Dante divides his Divina Commedia into cantos. I have followed suit for identification and continuity. Eidner, Latin word for the phrases, table of contents. Inferno, Latin word for hell, stressing the fire of hell. In Dante Alighieri's Divina Commedia, the protagonist is guided through the three regions of the spirit world, hell, purgatory, and heaven. Purgatorio, Latin word for purgatory. Intermezzo, Latin word for in the middle. Actually, this is a musical term alluding to a passage that diverges from the main passages, giving a sort of mental rest. Paradiso, Latin word for heaven. Epilogus, Latin word for epilogue, a literary section placed at the end that summarizes the entirety of the work. Verbatim, Latin word for glossary. YHWH, in Hebrew, the Tetragrammaton, YHWH is translated, I am that I am. It is the name for God. Sayyid, a southern Syrian Arabic title of respect roughly equivalent to Mr. Satrap, the Babylonian term for governor of a province. It is used frequently in the Bible in the books dealing with the Babylonian captivity and subsequent prophecies. Ashpizim, plural, an Aramaic term for honored guests. It is particularly applied to those invited to take part in the Scoth feast, Hebrew Feast of Booths, or harvest festival roughly equivalent to American and Canadian Thanksgiving. Amyad, literally, a column or pillar. In Hebrew, the pulpit stand is referred to as the amyad. Arras, an anglicization of a Flemish word for tapestry or large wall hanging. Kykot, the estate of John D. Rockefeller, who was at one time considered the richest man in the world. Scutum, Latin for shield. The Roman soldier carried a scutum, a pilus, a pugio, and the gladius hispaniensis. Pilus, a Roman soldier's javelin. He was usually outfitted with two, that were slung over his back, not unlike arrows in a quiver. Pugio, a Roman soldier's short sword or dagger used for close quarters hand-to-hand fighting. It was used primarily for stabbing at short range. Gladius hispaniensis, a Roman soldier's long sword. Literally the gladiator's Hispanic sword, so called because it was copied after the swords the Romans encountered in their conquest of the Iberian Peninsula, as a part of the Punic Wars with Carthage. Non-tam, Latin phrase for no more. The Spanish version of this phrase, no ms, was famously uttered by the Panamanian boxer, Roberto Duran, in the 1980 fight with Sugar Ray Leonard. The fight ended with Duran withdrawing in the 8th round, allegedly saying, no ms, to referee Octavio Marin. For the record, Duran denies having said it. Cold Mountain State Penitentiary, the setting for the Tom Hanks movie, The Green Mile. Count of Monte Cristo, Hannibal Lecter, and John Mason, fictional characters who were held prisoner. Count of Monte Cristo, the protagonist of the Alexander Dumas eponymous novel. He is wrongly imprisoned but escapes. Hannibal Lecter, the cannibalistic and very rightfully imprisoned male lead in the movie, The Silence of the Lambs. Sir Anthony Hopkins won the Oscar copyright for his portrayal of Lecter. John Mason, a fictional British spy in the movie, The Rock, imprisoned in Alcatraz prison, because he knew too many national secrets, to be allowed to be free. The character was portrayed by Sean Connery, who had some experience at playing British spies. This concludes the reading of Dante's Woods, a wood called Gnosis by John R. Wible. We hope you have enjoyed it. If you would like to read it online, please set your browser to John the Baptist 15 con with no spaces. If you need a hard copy, please contact the author at jwible@knology.net or call at 334-414-2853. Thank you and Merry Christmas.